Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 12 of the 2023 Tour de France. Today's stage, 168 kilometers, 5 mountain passes on today's race, but the last one is going to summit with about 28 kilometers to go on today's race. It's going to drop down a descent, and then it's going to have one last little bump with about 15 kilometers to go of 1K. It's 1K long, a little bit steep, about 6%, and then once that summits, you're dropping down a flat run all the way into the finish of today's stage 12 of the Tour de France. Now, I told you guys yesterday on the Butterfly Effect that today's race was for certain going to be one for the breakaway specialist. There is no reason when you're talking about a general classification team like Jonas Vingegaard's Jumbo Visma or UAE Team Emirates to think anything different. No one team, without spending a ton of energy, can control the whole peloton here at the Tour de France and bring it all the way into a sprint like on a stage here of stage 12 with 5 mountain passes. Especially when we're talking the first half of the course is lumpy and bumpy to begin with, little flat section right in the middle, and then 3 sharp, hard climbs before we top over that last one with what, like I said, about 28 kilometers to go. And those last climbs are about 6 and 7% with about 5 kilometers long each one of them. So they're difficult the last 3. But the first half of the course, when you get here at the Tour de France for like stage 12, going almost 2 weeks into the Tour de France, that means everybody's legs are getting tired, but the good riders are still strong. Many times I've done the Tour de France. When you get in a stage like this, you know it's going to be full gas. So keep that in mind, what I've told you. I've ridden for some of the smallest teams in the world like Webcor, and I won a Grand Tour at the Vuelta a España in 2013 with Radio Shack. I've been from the low end and I've been to the high end of the European peloton. And I'm telling you 100%, just like I said yesterday, a breakaway stage cannot be held back on a stage like 12 here, because there's no way the GC teams want to spend that kind of energy that it would take to control a stage like this. It could be done, but it's never done because it's too much energy to waste to be able to bring everything in, to bring it into the very final for, say, like a team like UAE Team Emirates, and then have Tadej Pogacar sprint for time bonus for classifications. Now, I'm going to clear up why I spent that much time telling you that's a breakaway stage on today's stage 12 when we get to the very end of today's stage, so tune in. When the racing starts, kilometer 0, let's pause just for a second as we wait for one of the riders to get back on from the back there that had it mechanical. He gets pushed back up from the motorcycle holding on. Once he gets to the back, the race leader's red car here at the Tour de France waves the flag, and it's time for the action to begin. Now, I hope you guys had time to watch 168 kilometers because it was attacks nonstop and there was never a moment of calmness throughout today's stage 12 of the Tour. We see the attack right away. It's Mads Pedersen. He's the first knucklehead here on stage 12 of the Tour de France. I don't understand what Mads Pedersen's doing. He's a classic specialist. The last half of this race here with these 3 hard climbs, this is not an ideal stage for Mads Pedersen. Can he win? Sure he can. Can you win if you're just spinning chips, being the first rider, attacking, going up the road? You're probably not going to win and you'll probably get dropped. But that's not going to slow Mads Pedersen down anyways, because he feels good at the start here of stage 12, so he's going up the road. Now, that's going to get brought back, and there's attacks coming nonstop as we start getting into the first categorized climb here. Look, as they're coming into the roundabout here, it's chaos all over the place. They're going to come into the roundabout. It's a hard right turn, and the peloton's been going full gas, strung out all over the place, and you got chaos. You got guys going the long way around the roundabout to the left, guys shooting it the proper way through the right, and then some guys cutting the island there that'll jump over the middle island, then jump over the island there in the roundabout, and then they'll come through. We'll see James Shaw from EF Education at the back of the peloton, and we see Caleb Ewan. He's in big time problems here already early on stage 12. Now we see James Shaw. He's got his hand up. That means he's got a mechanical. Guys, you never want to be in this situation this early into a stage that's made for the breakaway riders because the gas is full going at the front. We'll see again Mads Pedersen drilling in at the front. Wout van Aert now is drilling in at the front. He's going full gas. Attacks all over the place. But if I back the film up just a little bit, Julian Alaphilippe was throwing in huge attacks up this climb. Then once we get near the top, we see not only is it Wout van Aert, but Mathieu van der Poel's going up the road. Again, these guys are all knuckleheads. They're all classic specialists. Julian Alaphilippe with the exception if he has some form, but Julian Alaphilippe doesn't have great form and needs to spend his energy wisely here at the Tour de France if he wants to try to come away with a stage victory here in 2023. Now, those guys all get brought back together. We see Ineos go over the top. That's Danny Martinez go at the top of the KOM with all the GC intact. Behind, the peloton was blowing up all over the place, and when we come down the descent, this is when we see De La Cruz. He attacked early in the beginning of the climb here. Now we're going down the descent. He's going to crash hard, guys. This will end his 2023 Tour de France run here for the Astana rider, as he's going to not finish today's stage. Up front, we see Wout van Aert's drilling it. He's got the peloton strung out. He's riding the front 100%. This guy is burning chips all over. Now, Wout van Aert is absolutely a monster, but he doesn't have last year's 2022 form where he can just blow chips all over, but he's on the front drilling it. Wilco Kelderman to be throwing in some tacks, and we'll see Marc Soler from UAE ET members, the Solerism, as he's covering moves getting up there. Don't have much problems with this, but I don't like it. It's not a tactic I do, because Wilco Kelderman, when he's up in those front groups, he's not a threat on the general classification, so I'd rather see Soler staying back there with Tadej Pogačar, the #1 ranked rider in the world, so no reason to break the #1 rule on the butterfly effect, never leave your team leader. He does. He goes up the road. We see a little bit of chaos back there from Jonas Vingegaard closing some gaps with Tadej Pogačar locked on his wheel, but it's really the stuff that's happening in the front that I want to talk about. Soler will get up into these breaks. He'll close the gaps. Everything will start to slightly be coming back together. Then you see the Solerism throw an attack. No reason, Marc Soler, for you to be tacking ever throughout this stage. You want to jump across gaps. You want to bring your race leader, Tadej Pogačar, across gaps. That's something different in general. But if you're jumping and you're the first rider attacking, you are a knucklehead right here. Well, he's going to pay for this. Soler gets brought back, and then we see Thies Benoot with about 107 kilometers to go. He goes up the road. He's got Dylan Teuns on his wheel, and these two riders are getting a gap on everyone. Again, Thies Benoot's a big-time knucklehead, and so is the management and the DS at Jumbo-Visma for allowing Thies Benoot, Wout van Aert, and Wilco Kelderman to be attacking left and right early here in this stage 12. Now, Thies Benoot's going full gas. Like I said, Dylan Teuns is locked on his wheel. Out of nowhere, Mads Pedersen from Lidl Trek. Look at that. I got it right for once here on the butterfly effect, calling it Lidl Trek and not Trek Segafredo. Well, Mads Pedersen's up there. They got 3 riders. Nothing's slowing down back there in the peloton of GC favorites, with the exception that they are small in numbers. About 55 riders left here in stage 12, trying to go for a victory or trying to protect their race leaders, Jonas Vingegaard or Tadej Pogačar, that could win this year's Tour de France. Now we see with those 3 riders going up the road, about 10 kilometers later, we're going to see Amador and Izagirre from Cofidis bridge across. They got some company, and they're going to take a few kilometers till they get up there to Thies Benoot. Just as they're kind of coming up the climb there, Thies Benoot's backing off on the front, and we see the group starting to get a little bit bigger. Last guy that's going to jump across is going to be Thies Benoot from FDJ Solo. And watch, look as he's bridging across the gap. He closes it quickly. And I said he was the last, but there's some more coming. But the other guys are going to take a little bit longer, because it's going to be Julian Alaphilippe from Pseudo Quickstep. He's going to jump, and luckily for Julian Alaphilippe, we see Stuyvens, Jasper Stuyvens from Lidl Trek, bridges up to Julian Alaphilippe. Now we look up at the picture of the breakaway up there. We got about 10 guys up there now, and you see it's Mads Pedersen sitting last wheel. Mads Pedersen, Lidl Trek's got his teammate Stuyvens back there from Lidl Trek. That's why he's sitting on the back. The other guys are rotating through pretty steadily, and we'll see we're coming to the intermediate sprint competition. So Mads Pedersen's going to win this with no threat from anybody else in the breakaway. As he's going across the sprint line competition first, look at the back. It's Julian Alaphilippe and Stuyvens. They're attaching on with about 15 rider plus group up front here, and some multiple numbers. You got 2 riders from Movistar with Rubens Guerrero in there, and Jorgensen, Matteo Jorgensen, the American rider. He's representing for Movistar too, so that's 2 guys. Got to pay attention to that. Cofidis have numbers up there. They got Jan Izagirre up there, and they got Guillaume Martin. That's 2 riders. Thies Benoot's done a ton of work, but he has made the front group here for Jumbo-Visma, so they got representation up here. Why they need representation, I have no idea. Doesn't make any sense to me, because the real mountain stages here at the Tour de France, we've only had a couple of them in a row, and the real stuff's going to begin on tomorrow's stage 13 of the Tour de France. But Thies Benoot, Wilco Kelderman, and Wout van Aert spent a ton of energy early here in stage 12, and now Thies Benoot is just going to deliver some more energy throughout the finish of today's stage 12 here, trying to win the stage for Jumbo-Visma, because let me remind you guys, They were on stage 12, and they haven't won a stage yet in this 23 edition of the Tour de France. So Ties Benoot's up there representing. Other numbers to start paying attention. Mathieu van der Poel, I said, is up there. Thibaut Pinot, he bridged across too. And things are going to start getting interesting as we start seeing Amador and we see Mathieu van der Poel attack with 2 climbs still to go here in the stage 12. Now, they need to get a gap. Mathieu van der Poel hasn't been on fantastic form. Even though he was winning races right before the Tour de France started, his form has not been spectacular, unless, of course, he's been doing lead-outs for Jasper Philipsen, who won 3 stage victories here at the Tour de France with Mathieu van der Poel pulling in front of him and a 4th without him. But here today, Mathieu van der Poel needs some time. That's why he's going up the road with Andre Amador. They got about a 30-second gap, and it's not quite going to be enough. So Mathieu van der Poel is going to accelerate and drop Andre Amador in the penultimate climb. What's happening behind? Well, in the peloton, Jumbo-Visma were controlling everything at the front with Wout van Aert and Wilco Kelderman, but then they started getting some help. AG2R got on the front with about 65 kilometers to go here at stage 12 for absolutely no reason other than they're a bunch of knuckleheads. Now, Jens Voigt, he's riding the motorcycle for the GCN commentators here while I'm watching it live from the Chesterfield. So they send Jens Voigt back there to talk to the director sportif from AG2R. Jens asked him, what are you guys doing? Well, he says there's some guys dropped. There are some guys dropped from this front group of about 50, 60 riders up here with AG2R pulling. But why are you still pulling? Well, they got Felix Gall. Felix Gall 16th on the general classification. And some of the guys that did make this front group, Sepp Kuss, he was 10th on the general classification when today's stage started. And Landa's missing. Then we got Louis Menkes missing and 1 or 2 other riders that are in the top 15, but nobody really that's climbing fantastic here at the Tour de France with the exception of Sepp Kuss. But pulling today, trying to hold a gap on Sepp Kuss doesn't seem to be a very intelligent move to me when your best rider, Felix Gall, 16th on the general classification, and you guys missed a breakaway of 15, 17 riders up the road. Do you really think you're going to do something amazing today and then be able to go top 10 here at the Tour de France? Well, Felix Gall maybe can, but this is a ton of energy to spend for AG2R. And let me remind you guys, every time AG2R is on the front, that means UAE Team Emirates isn't on the front, and it for sure means that the race leader's yellow jersey, Jonas Vingegaard's Jumbo-Visma team's not on the front either, so they're getting a free rest, which means they're going to be that much stronger in tomorrow's stage 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 21. So the AG2R director for putting your team on the front, you are an absolute knucklehead. Now, AG2 aren't going to be the only knuckleheads because there's some more teams back there that are going to ride to help them out too. But let's go back up because Mathieu van der Poel is starting to throw an attack on Andre Amador going up the penultimate climb. He drops the EF Education rider Amador. Now he's going solo. Only problem he has is behind we're seeing chaos from the group of chasers because first we're going to see Mads Pedersen coming out the back. Shortly after him, Stuyvens is going to come out the back. Julian Alaphilippe's going to come out the back. And my man Victor Campenaerts is coming out the back. But my man Vic, he's a fighter. He's going to fight and he will get back onto that front group that's chasing Mathieu van der Poel. They go down the penultimate climb. We're going to see Matteo Jorgensen and Thibaut Pinot from FDJ. They get a gap and they're trying to bridge up to Mathieu van der Poel. Now we're on the last and final category climb here. It's a 5 kilometers long at solid percentage of about 6.5–7%. So it's a solid climb, but at, like I said, 5K, it's not a super long one. Here when you're talking about the European peloton, Mathieu van der Poel is going to disagree with me though because his legs are starting to hurt and he's paying the price for all those knucklehead attacks at the beginning here of stage 12. Now we're going up the final climb. Mathieu van der Poel solo up the road, but like I said, Thibaut Pinot and Jorgensen have made some time up on the Dutch rider. They'll catch him with about 32 kilometers to go. Let's go further down to the chasers because when they hit the climb proper, they had 6-7 guys there, and then we're going to see 2 guys chasing from behind. The 2 guys, Guillaume Martin and Stuyvens. They're doing a solid job of holding the group in front, and then we'll see Guillaume Martin do a big acceleration, and he's going to bridge across up to that front group as my man Victor Campenaerts is coming out the back. We got about 7 guys chasing 2 that are chasing 1, but the 2 guys, Thibaut Pinot and Jorgensen, they're going to round up Mathieu van der Poel shortly. As they round them up, the view from above scans back and we see the 7 chasers behind. It looks like for sure they're going to catch Mathieu van der Poel because on the front is it Garrett from Cofidis. Cofidis rider's doing a solid job and his teammates on the back there. We're talking about Guillaume Martin. Now with Cofidis pulling full gas, he's going to bring back the 3 riders in front. And what does Izagirre do? Well, he accelerates hard on the pedals. We see Matthew Vanderpool from Albacete to Koenig trying to hold on for dear life, and then he pops, and that opens the gap to Izagirre. Izagirre from Cofidis. They already won stage 2 with Victor Lefebvre. Can they win a second stage here at the Tour de France? 2 stages in 1 year. It's been a decade and a half since they won a stage before this year's 2023. But Izagirre's looking solid. He's going hard on the pedals up this final KOM, and he'll pass the top solo. What was happening to the chasers behind? Well, there were some big time attacks. Bergerdo from Total Energy was throwing in attacks. Thibaut Pinot was throwing in attacks. Matteo Jorgensen, the American from Movistar, he's trying to win a stage here too, so he's throwing in attacks. But the whole problem, every one of these attacks are having, if we look just behind the attacks, it's their Guillaume Martin from Cofidis that's covering every attack, shutting them down, not taking a pull because he's got his teammate going over the top of the KOM solo. Now we'll see Izagirre bombing down the descent, doing a solid ride. He'll get into the flat sections with about 17 kilometers to go. As we look back, the group of 7 chasers back there with one guy sitting on, 6 chasers with one sitting on, Guillaume Martin. He's not taking any pulls at all on the front. Peloton now has gotten bigger in size as Sepp Kuss has gotten back on with Dylan Van Barley from Jumbo-Visma. So we know Jumbo-Visma got a host of help there if Jonas Vingegaard gets any problems. And we know AG2R have wasted their time riding the front because most of the guys that were ahead of them on the general classification have all gotten back on now with Sepp Kuss up there. Now we look at the back of the groups chasing with Guillaume Martin sitting on. We see there's still some more attacks from these guys all the way coming down the descent. They're not working really well together. When we hit the flat section up front for the lone leader of Izagirre, he's got one more bump of about a K to go. He's powering hard over this as he gets to the top. He's got about 40-50 second gap on the chasers behind. Now the Peloton as they were coming down the descent. What happened? Well, there was a crash back there for Treyen from Uno X. Torsten Treyen, he goes off to the left side of the road, gets off into the grass. He crashes, his bike flips up in the air, flies across the road, and nails Mühlberger there from Movistar. Mühlberger somehow magically holds the bike up and continues riding, but later on, a few kilometers with about 17K to go, we'll see the Movistar rider on the side of the road changing bikes. So Torsten Treyen's bike must have did some kind of damage to his as he's getting a bike change. Now, let's go back up to the front because as we're going over the last climb here in today's stage 12, it's about 14 kilometers to go. It was only a small bump, but it did not slow down at all. Izagirre from Cofidis. Now the Cofidis rider's flying. He's extending the gap with about 5 kilometers to go, up to about a minute because the guys behind are not working well. With about 3.5 kilometers to go, we'll see Jorgensen and we'll see Bergerdo finally break away from those guys, and they'll start getting the gap. They're going hard on the pedals, but up front with 600 meters to go, Izagirre knows he's got today's stage win, and he starts celebrating. He'll ride it into the line, celebrating, kisses to the crowd, pointing the fingers up in the air, fist bumps. Number 1 rider in the world. He's got all the big celebrations because he's got about a minute gap on everyone behind. What was happening to the chasers? Well, Jorgensen was going full gap with Bergerdo. We see just behind them, Thies Benoot tried to salvage something here, riding like a knucklehead. Guys, they've rode with Wout van Aert. They rode with Wilco Kelderman. Thies Benoot, who'd gone full gas. Now there's no chance at all for him to win the stage with about 15 kilometers to go, basically, and he's still been riding full gas. Now Thies Benoot's riding full gas for 4th place on the stage. Up front with about 500 meters to go, we'll see that it's Jorgensen that has to do the lead out with Bergerdo sitting on his wheel. Bergerdo jumps with about 150, 175 meters to go, goes all the way to the left side of the road, and it's a one-on-one drag race coming down right side of the road. Jorgensen, left side of the road. There's Bergerdo from Total Energies. Bergerdo's got a little more speed than the American on the right, so he'll get second. Third on the stage will be the American Matteo Jorgensen, and Jumbo-Visma's Thies Benoot will round out 4th here on stage 12. I don't understand what Jumbo-Visma was doing, but let's go back because there's some other knuckleheads back there. As we see, Ineos is getting on the front. Ineos did some pulling right after AG2R decided to sit up. Ineos is going to the front because they're going to protect their stuff on the top 10 classification too with Carlos Rodriguez because everybody's worried about Thibaut Pinot. Well, we saw it at the Giro d'Italia where Thibaut Pinot jumped up to 5th on the GC by the time the Italian race finished. But here, this is the Tour de France. Ineos going full gas. And guys, I hate these tactics. I hate them, and I think you're a big-time knucklehead unless it's unless it's the last mountain stage of the Tour de France. Maybe I'll give you 2 stages to go. But we still got a bunch of mountain stages here to go. I don't know if I'd be riding at the front, and I hate it when I'm sitting on the Chesterfield looking at a bunch of knucklehead teams riding to defend 16th on the general classification just to move up a few spots. And now we see Ineos drilling it all the way into the finish of today's stage. Tadej Pogacar finished with Jonas Vingegaard on his wheel, and Tadej Pogacar's looking fresh when he crossed today's stage 12 finish line about 4 minutes down on the stage winner of Izagirre. Jonas Vingegaard looks pretty good too, but Jumbo-Visma can't be that fresh after today's race. The interviewers from GCN, they'll go over and interview the director sportif for Jumbo-Visma, and he said it was a good day for us. They're asked what they were doing, tacking all the time with Wilco Kelderman, Wout van Aert, and Tish Benoot up the road, and he said they wanted to take the time bonuses away from Tadej Pogacar, and secondary on the stage was to try to win with Tish Benoot. Man, you are the biggest knucklehead. I have never seen a stage like today where the breakaway does not go away and take all the time bonuses naturally. You don't have to be wearing the race leader's jersey and be attacking to get the rest of the field motivated at the Tour de France in the middle of the Tour de France on stage 12 on a day like today to get a breakaway to go up the road and take the time bonuses. Guys, if you're Jumbo-Visma, you want to put a guy in the break to try to win the stage? Sure, but a breakaway is going to go up the stage, and it doesn't need help from Wout van Aert pulling for 7 kilometers on the front, plus maybe 10, 15 other attacks throughout today's stage 12. Wilco Kelderman, he is a knucklehead too, but it's the DS clearly that told him to do it. And Tish Benoot, he's definitely a knucklehead. Not only was he tacking, but then he got in the break. He's pulling the break while he has the race leader's yellow jersey. He could easily pull that card out of his back pocket and go, guys, I got the race leader's jersey. I'm up here, but I'm just going to rotate through nice and easy and keep it relaxed. And then I'm going to beat all you guys on the last climb here with the 5th climb to go with 28K left and try to go solo like Izagirre did. Instead, Tish Benoot wasted all his bullets, got dropped from everyone going up the last climb here, especially Izagirre, and then lost today's race, and the best he can get was 4th on the stage. When you look at the director sportif saying this was a good stage for us, I'm sitting up here on the butterfly effect saying you guys are all knuckleheads. That was a ton of energy wasted when you already have the race leader's yellow jersey. And guys, like I said, when I've raced for small teams, big teams, I had to do tactics perfect all the time. Today's stage tactics with Jumbo-Visma completely made no sense. You don't need Wout van Aert, Wilco Kelderman, and Tish Benoot going 100% to motivate the rest of the field to get in the breakaway. It's going to happen on its own because it's called the Tour de France. Like and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next edition real soon.